Mine already done it. You're over talking. Now what are you doing?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Night one of the Finance Committee warrant review. Just for some clarification for those of you in the audience and those of you following along at home. Tonight we will be discussing in the special town meeting Article 3, and in the annual town meeting we will be discussing Articles 7, 10 through 27, and then as well as 28 and 29, 31, and that's it. On Wednesday, we will be covering in the special town meeting Articles 1, 2, and 6, and in the annual town meeting, Articles 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 30, 32, 33, 34, 35, 37, 38, and 39. All others will be discussed on Thursday. And Steve, whenever you're ready.
So on the slide is or on the screen is a slide we've seen before. We're working our way through the process. This is the last stop. The meetings this week are the last stop before we make our way to the annual town meeting. We reviewed the budget 2 weeks ago, and as the chair mentioned, the purpose this week is to work through the articles that are in the warrant. The numbers he listed tonight loosely will be all of the capital projects. We have our Public Works team here tonight. We'll be going through the infrastructure projects and some of the related projects that are proposed for the upcoming year. Wednesday night, we have a series of citizens petitions and bylaw recommendations. And then Thursday, we'll be finishing out with circling back to the Public Works budget that we tabled along with associated articles. So tonight will be mostly capital, and with that I think we can dive right in. For the newer members, we do at the annual town meeting each year, we typically have a special town meeting warrant that is embedded within the annual town meeting warrant. The reason for that, all of the votes taken at the annual town meeting are effective as of July 1st. Votes that are taken as part of the special town meeting are effective upon passage, and that's important for articles like Article 3. Each year the town receives a portion of the Chapter 90 bond bill, which is are the proceeds that we use to work on local roadways. And by voting to appropriate these dollars in the special town meeting, it allows our streets division to get started with their road work prior to July, which is important because we want to get those projects started as soon as we can in the spring construction cycle. So each year the state typically appropriates $200 million across the Commonwealth, and $877,000 is the town of Danvers portion of that based on the formula that they use, which takes into account street miles, socioeconomics, etc. We have the town engineer here tonight. We talk each year about the roadway acceptance program, so as we incrementally accept more of the older roadways or newer roadways that are part of subdivisions that get built out to town spec, those miles get added to our total roadway, which it ultimately gets factored into our Chapter 90 apportionment. Happy to take any questions about anything I just said.
Eric?
No questions.
Aaron?
No.
Wally?
I'm good this far.
Arthur?
Awesome.
Mike?
No.
Questions from the audience? Is there a motion?
Move the article.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
With the easy stuff out of the way, I'm going to turn it over as fast as I can to our Public Works team. But in summary, if you look on page, let me circle back. I did start to note these.
5.
Page 5 in your warrant booklets, there is a brief explanation as well as a proposed bylaw We have David Lane, who is our Director of Utilities, and Clint Allen, who is our Assistant Director of Utilities, Assistant Utility Director. This bylaw is recommended for a number of reasons. What I would offer in summary is that telecom companies have a right to install certain equipment to extend their networks, and the town has the choice of having a bylaw in place that sort of directs and guides the scale and the location and the design of those, or we simply react to them when the applications come in. So the electric division worked to get in front of this and have a bylaw in place so that when we get applications, because we have received applications, that we're prepared to guide and direct those companies to do it the way that we would like to see it done rather than the way they would prefer to do it. So, if there are specific questions, we are joined tonight by the folks who developed this, and we'd be happy to take those questions.
Great. Mike?
I can say that we did have a discussion about this at the Municipal Light Board, and the Municipal Light Board did vote to support this particular bylaw, and basically for the same sort of reasons that the town manager said, which was at this point right now we have absolutely no guidelines, no real regulations beyond what the state requires. And there have been, I believe there's at least one that has actually been approved through the state mechanisms. And certainly the thought is that it would be a far better situation for us to get ahead of this. It's very much a safety issue. I think it would be fair to say that you know, those poles have a lot of stuff on them that we want people who know what they're doing on there, and sometimes, to be nice, the cable folks aren't always the most qualified from that standpoint, so we want to make sure that the positioning of the items on those poles and the safety is right there with it as well. So,
Thanks. Arthur?
I'm all set.
Wow. Aaron?
No questions.
Eric?
Simple question. Give an example of where the poles are currently placed, just so I can visualize what we're talking about.
These devices are proposed to be put on existing utility poles in our system in accordance with where Danvers Electric would allow them to go. Any installations have to be approved by the select board before we can start on that.
And visually, can you see them? Is it like, it's not like that large pole I have over that I can see off of?
Correct. If anyone's seen the boxes on the poles that we use for the meter, the electric meter, it looks similar to those.
Okay, thank you.
Could you give me some size? I mean, are we talking
18 by 18?
I probably missed it in here.
Yeah, I think the maximum is like 28 cubic feet. The whole box altogether is the max, so it's a maximum size, but
Right.
like 18 to 18 or 28 by 28, that kind of size.
And how many of these we think you're going to be using throughout the town? Any idea about numbers? Is that, I really appreciate the fact that the electric department is getting ahead of this, and the town's getting ahead of it, because as I read through the whole thing, it just, you know, how obtrusive is it? I mean, in the sense of homeowners, and is it something that blocks sight lines? Is it going to be too much for a pole? All this stuff that's fairly well explained, but you know, as a person that doesn't understand all that stuff at all, the regular town owner, the homeowner is going to be a little concerned. You're going to see trucks all over the place, I guess, at some point. So, you know, I think we need it. It sounds good. We should get out in front of it, but I'm just a little concerned that it's going to be overly difficult for us to handle. I mean.
So to back up 1 second, we're not exactly sure how many of these the carriers need. It's existing phone carriers that need these antennas to beef up gaps in their system. There's residents in Danvers that their neighborhood doesn't have good phone reception.
You're talking about cell phones.
Cell phone.
That's me.
Yeah.
So Mr. Scarmus of his neighborhood is one of those.
Right.
So what they've done is done studies to find where the locations like that are, and that's where these small boxes would be put on the pole. The bylaw before you is made so that the box we put on the pole so they don't interfere with anything else, any other carriers on the poles. They're not obtrusive, they don't block sight lines. We're gonna make sure all that does not happen. And they're there for the benefit of the users.
Yes. Okay, well, I just saw the size of the description, and it's rather wordy, but it has to be because of what they're doing. But I was a little concerned why, I guess, and it's basically the cell phone service.
Correct. It's to enhance cell phone service.
You know, you can still get the ground line in, Arthur.
Yeah.
No problem, no further questions.
Thanks, Paul. Questions from the audience? Mark? I didn't see Bill's hand, actually, so.
Mark Zubrick. I'm concerned, this is a reactionary guidance to our future antennas that are going to be installed. But I'm more concerned about the health, safety, and the infrared signals that are coming from these particular antennas, because they're lower, they're closer to your residence, and they generate some rays that we do have to experience. I understand why this thing is being proposed, but what I like to do is just get an explanation of how will this prevent those type of issues that the town will experience in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At first, these devices are a permitted use on our poles. It's been vetted through the DPU. This is not something we can say, Danvers is not gonna have these. It's allowed. We've been down that road already and said no, and we talked to the DPU, and this is allowed. So the only thing we can do is guide how they're installed. Part of that is when we guide it through this bylaws to make sure they're safe with the distances. Mr. Allen can talk a little bit about the safety distances where they'd be put.
Thanks, Dave. Clint Allen, Assistant Utility Director. So if you read through on page 11 is more of the specifics of the actual installation requirements. And a lot of Mr. Zuber's concerns are addressed within that. So we're not going to allow them within 500 feet of each other. We're not going to allow them within 500 feet of any public schools. And if you look through small wireless facilities requirements, numbers 1 through 6, it really spells out, as David mentioned earlier, the 28 cubic feet requirement, and then the various height and distance and lateral clearance requirements that we're requiring. And additionally, on item 6, speaks to the actual radio frequency exposure as required by the Underwriters Laboratory and the specifications that has to be in accordance with that. So the document really serves to guide these providers where they can put them in the most optimal places and make sure that the installations meet the aesthetic requirements that the town really requires.
Thank you. Go ahead, Bill.
Bill Bradstreet, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. For some time, I know the electric division has been putting taller poles in because we have so many lines or whatever. Would it be possible at some point for us to get a picture of an average pole in the order of what's put where? So that for an individual, well, is that where it's supposed to be? It's where it's supposed to be. Without a visual, some of us can't see very well.
That's an excellent idea, Mr. Bradstreet. We have an example of a sample pole, and it is regulated which lines can go where. Communication zone, the low voltage zone, the high voltage. So we can provide a sample pole. We have that in our terms and conditions.
Mark?
I appreciate the explanation in regards to the requirements of the bylaw, but we already have in our own town frequency infractions of dirty power and lines interfere with signals in our town itself. And this does not really go into the proximity of these antennas. How close can they be to your home and my home? That's the question I think everybody has on their mind, because this could become a antenna, every 3 or 4 poles. And we don't know where they're going to be going. But we still have a concern in regard to the health, safety, and radiation issues.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could, that was a question that was raised at the Electric Municipal Light Board meeting, and as is often the case with these types of situations, although I think as it was presented, that may be correct, it's important to remember that as of this point right now, we have no real regulatory structure or no real regulations to be able to stop that. And so the attempt on this to be able to, I guess, to go from 0 to improvement, I think is an excellent thing. I'm not going to lie to you, these are not, obviously we didn't come up with this on our own. We didn't sit in a room and come up with this. We consulted with both communities and the DPU in regards to language that made sense and has made sense in other places. That being said, this is a relatively new area of regulation, so it's highly possible that we may find points in the future where we may need to make adjustments. But to not go forward with this because somehow we would argue that no regulation is better than some regulation doesn't seem to make sense to me. So just leave that the way it is.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? Members?
One last one, Mike, is there a timeline? Is it a contract, or is it just open-ended? I mean, we can change, improve as we go along. We're not bound by what's going to be passed here, and then 2 years down the road, we find a glitch here and there, and then we can't change it.
No, of course not. It's a bylaw. We'd be in a position to be able to go through the amendment process the same as any other bylaw. So,
Excellent, thank you.
Is there a motion?
so moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Article 31.
Article 31 is also on page 31. This is a fairly large capital project that the electric division is undertaking. Anybody who drives around the mall is aware of the current substation, which creates a lot of line of sight issues. And the division has worked very closely with the mall over the last few years to plan this project. And I know they're very excited to get started with it. So I would, Clint, or David, if you want to provide sort of a general overview of what we're doing here. And
Sure, thank you, Steve. Obviously, the general overview would be we're replacing the existing substation with a modern new device. That one there is at the end of its useful life and needs to be replaced. It's been part of our reliability program for a long time. It has just come up now. We're very fortunate to be able to work with them all on the land swap. We built that parking lot in order to gain land so that we can build the new station at the size we want, and we can build it next to the existing one and keep that in service while we build the new one. That was very important to the system and the reliability. As we look at the capital program, we're looking at 5 years out every year, and it looked like with this project and the long lifespan, we recommended to bond the money, borrow it. It made sense, and our debt level is relatively low in the electric division right now. So it made financial sense to recommend bonding this project.
Thank you. Paul?
Does this project just cover the mall itself, or does it get outside the mall's territory?
No, there's 4 kV circuits that go all over that area of town. It's
Okay.
not just the mall.
Right. That's it for me.
Eric?
Just want to make sure I understand the terms of borrowing. I know we've been talking a lot about debt and debt service. I just want to make sure I understand what are the terms of repaying that, and how does that impact our current debt load?
So this debt, through you, Mr. Chairman, this debt would be paid exclusively through electric receipts, so it would be separate from our general fund obligation. And I don't have the set term, but generally in the past, similar projects have been either a 10 or 15-year borrowing with equal principal, so declining debt is usually how we handle for electric, water, and sewer
Okay.
debt structures.
Thank you. Aaron?
No questions.
Thank you for asking that.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Almost it.
Mike?
Yeah, I think when we've, again, from the municipal light board standpoint, we haven't really borrowed a tremendous amount of money over the last probably 10 years. It's been really a policy that in order for the electric light to borrow money would require a substantial project. This one was something that there was quite a bit of review done, and the determination to come back to borrow as opposed to try to pay for it generally, basically through just regular capital expenditure, didn't make a lot of sense, primarily because, as Clint said, the long-term value in this project was substantial. So it was definitely not a decision that was taken lightly to bond, but it did make sense within the electric lights budget to do it that way.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
that reminds me, in the next 3 to 5 years, do we foresee anything other sizable projects that might bring the same conversation back up?
We are looking at replacing the control house at our main substation in town. We're still evaluating whether or not we can do that through depreciation, but that would be like a 5-year type project. And I also wanted to note another benefit of this project is we have another substation over by the middle school, the Conant substation. It's similar vintage to this substation, about 70 years old. It's also at the end of its life. By rebuilding the substation and the design that we're going with, we're going to be able to decommission that one and pick up all that load as well. So kind of like like 1 for 2 deal, I guess.
Great, thanks. Questions from the audience? Mark?
Promised myself I wasn't going to talk. I can't help it. One of the things, as you know, I have been dealing with in the past is the amount of cash available at the Municipal Light Board. The Municipal Light Board currently has I think it's over $20 million.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I think it's really important to make the point here that the Municipal Light Board doesn't have a dollar. The town municipal light division has resources. The light board itself has nothing.
And it's the electric company that has the value. Oh, I appreciate that, thank you. The thing is that I'm concerned about is that we're accumulating cash in the company value, but we're going out to borrow $14 million. And all this is going to do is increase the rates for our residents in our town. And what we're going to do is we're going to translate that $14 million into another fee or rate increase. And that's a possibility. The thing is, we should be using the available funds because we're not in the business of holding on to $20 million, but going out and borrowing $14 million for a station. The station is absolutely correct. That has to be rebuilt. The thing is, where does that money come from? And this is the reason I'm standing up and just letting you know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Steve?
I would say probably 4 or 5 years ago now, the light board, when Stan Svensson was still the chair, in large part based on Mark's repeated requests, conducted an audit. One of the questions that Mark wanted to see addressed in that audit was cash on hand. Much like the town has an unassigned fund balance or a general stabilization that is available for unexpected events, the light department is expected to have the same. The business that we're in providing electricity is a much more volatile business than we are in providing municipal services. After spending $40,000 on the audit, the conclusion was we probably don't have enough cash on hand. Because what the regulators want to see is that you have the resources to withstand any of the many disruptions that a utility can endure. We have put financial policies in place. We struggle to consistently maintain those. So I would thoroughly reject the notion that the electric light department is sitting on cash. As the professional said, each time a project comes along, we try to evaluate whether it makes more sense to pay for those through our depreciation account, which is a required set aside from the federal regulators. Every light plant in the Commonwealth has to set aside a certain, I believe it's 3 to 5%. Each year has to be set aside to cover ongoing capital costs. Periodically, when the project is large enough, we do need to borrow for it so that we don't deplete our cash reserves to a point where we wouldn't be able to respond to an emergency that occurred.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Chairman, I think the key to that is that if you make the assumption, which I think makes perfect sense to do, which is that you have to have a substantial amount of money remaining in reserve to be able to operate that business. If we were going to build this, and this over the course of whatever it is, about 2 years to build this, then the opposite would be true. We would need to fund approximately $7 million a year from the ratepayer in order to pay this. So this is a sound financial decision on behalf of the ratepayers to be able to actually make sure that they're paying much less on a year-to-year basis with this.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? Anything else from the board? Is there a motion?
Move the article.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Articles 10 and 11 can be found on pages 19 and 20 in the warrant booklets. We're joined tonight by Colby Cousins, our IT director. The technology plan each year is where we fund the large investments that we make in our IT equipment and infrastructure. And separate from that, we have an article for a policy change that the IT director has recommended that we look at, essentially converting one of our ongoing capital costs into an annual cost related to disaster recovery. And I would invite Colby to present some of the details on this.
Colby, welcome back.
Thank you. Colby Cousins, IT Director. So as you can see here, for general government, we're looking at 102, 182, 446 for schools, 15,000 for the library, and 90,000 for regional expenses, on which we will return 137,000. I don't know if you have any questions on that article.
Mike?
Nope.
Arthur?
I'm good.
Wally?
I'm good with this.
Aaron? Paul?
All set?
Questions from the audience? Bill, if your hand is up, I can't see your right one, so you raise your left, okay?
You'll know when it's
Okay. Is there a motion?
We have to do them one at a time?
Yeah.
I move Article 10.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Article 11.
Article 11, disaster recovery. So our current approach to disaster recovery is an on-premise solution. So what that means is we have a primary data center, and then we replicate the cost of that primary data center in a second site that we can fail over to at the high school if necessary. We're looking at a cloud-based model to replace this. The cloud-based model allows us to pay a low fee just to reserve resources, but all of our replicated data is in an off state until we need it. If we need it, if we have a disaster scenario, we incur costs at that point, but those costs are covered by insurance. So it's a kind of a new approach for us. It's flexible. It saves some costs, and it gets us some geographic diversity out of the town of Danvers with our disaster recovery.
Great. Paul?
Is this a disaster, is fund an inappropriate word to use?
Article, right?
Article 11,
Article 11, yeah, disaster recovery article, I guess.
yeah.
we'd call
So
it.
the 100,000 from free cash sits?
No, it goes to a vendor.
Okay.
Then they're on retainer to manage our disaster recovery scenario if one should occur. And they also manage one test a year of that to make sure that it operates in production.
Thank you.
Eric?
Are there ongoing costs for this? So once you set this up, what will be the ongoing costs next year or the year after?
We put in as a budget number 100,000 for the year. That correlates to what we pay now for our on-premise equipment. So we know we can get below that. We're not sure how below we can stay. We'll have to see if we experience a disaster scenario, what that plays out like. But generally, we're looking at about $75,000 a year with no disasters incurred.
Understood.
Eric?
Just curious, how many vendors did you negotiate with in this space?
We are currently negotiating with 4 vendors. We have 2 of them under our price point now, so we have a pretty good selection and some flexibility to choose based on the technology that we like.
Good. And then how quickly after the disaster can you get the information? What's the response time?
That is one of the parameters that we're evaluating between vendors. So that varies between the vendors we've been looking at. And in general, you can get your data back. You can fail back very quickly with more expensive vendors. So there's a little bit of a trade-off. We've got to find the best value that works for us in terms of those metrics.
So if we had downtime, what would that result in?
We would internally, we wouldn't be able to get on the internet and get to our files, that type of thing. Our financial system would be something we'd be worried about.
How about schools?
Schools are very cloud-based already, so they're a little bit less of a concern. Our on-premise equipment, critical infrastructure type stuff is of higher concern. Just the school atmosphere in general lends itself to the cloud-based services, software as a service type stuff. They've gone in that direction a lot further in education.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Wally?
I think I'm wrong. All right, thank you.
Arthur?
So do we have disasters? How often have we had disasters?
We've been lucky when it comes to disasters since I've been here.
Come on.
Should I not have asked that question?
Yes.
All right, that's fine, thanks.
I think at Colby's second or maybe third budget presentation, one of the board members, we were talking about cybersecurity, and one of the board members asked about attacks from Russia, and I made a comment that we don't get attacked by Eastern European countries. And he leaned over and he said, "You'd be surprised how often." I can say it now because it's 5 years later, but.
Not funny,
All right, so we've been good for a few years.
Yes, but very good.
Good job.
Mostly, I'm just surprised at how superstitious everyone in the room is.
Really?
No, cybersecurity, I get
serious.
spammed multiple times a week.
Yeah,
Serious attacks.
yeah. Mike,
No, thank you, I'm good.
questions from the audience? Mr. Bates?
Good evening, Bill Bates, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 4. Is this what we would hear about when they talk about towns being held hostage and all their data being held hostage? And we've seen some towns have gone and had to pay X amount of dollars to get that freedom. Is that what, will this protect from that?
Thank you. So there are a number of different measures to protect from exactly that. This is one of them, yes.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Move Article 11.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Articles 12 and 13 can be found on page 20 in the budget books. The first is a request to replace 2 vans that are part of the school's fleet. And if there are questions about that, we have the Director of Public Works as well as our Deputy Director of Public Works, our Ops Director, Rob Dever, in the audience, and we'd be happy to answer questions.
Any questions about the vans?
I have a question.
Oh,
Yeah.
Paul.
I think we talked about this earlier, but what is this primary purpose of these vans? Is it for special ed? Is it for moving student body athletic teams? What are the details?
I believe the answer to that is both.
Okay.
They move students around place to place, and they also do special ed pickups and delivery.
Multiple then?
Yep.
And, okay, that's good, thank you. All set.
Questions from the audience? Bill, is that your hand up? Okay. It was very lackluster hand raising, so.
He thinks that doesn't count.
Yeah.
It's not a
Trying to get a half out of you.
Again, Bill Bradstreet, Precinct 1. These vans, I think I brought it up before, will these be electric with a longer or shorter life than a gas or diesel powered one? Will it work out?
Not for $75,000.
Exactly right, Mr. Mitchell. Not for $75,000. We are, like we're doing with the whole fleet, on a case-by-case basis, looking at the cost-benefit of buying electric. Can we get the electric, and how does it work out? Mr. Dever is working on that right now. Also, he's working on the size of these vehicles. He's working closely with the school department officials to make sure, do we have to buy this 15-passenger? Is it an option to buy a 7? We're going through all those scenarios, different fuels and size,
Great.
before they're going to be bought.
Good question, Bill. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Article 13?
Article 13 is a smaller appropriation that supplements the Chapter 90 money that we talked about in the special town meeting warrant. We appropriate it each year to kind of fill in the gaps and work on smaller scale projects. And again, I think if there are specific questions about how these funds get utilized, the team would be happy to answer those questions.
Sure. Paul?
No questions?
Eric?
No questions.
Aaron?
I have a question. So the new developments that are being built, whether it's a housing community or apartments, do they have to pitch in any money to help develop the sidewalks around those areas? So I'll give you Dayton Street as an example. All of those new housing being built up on Putnam and then specifically on Dayton Street. Do they have to give the town any money to build sidewalks or assist with sidewalks?
Hi, good evening. Steve King, Town Engineer. Through you, Mr. Chair. For specific subdivisions within those developments, they are required to install sidewalks and roadways per the planning board decision. If it's outside of that, it's a public roadway, then we get Chapter 90 funds in addition to these funds to maintain those sidewalks and or install it.
So have you considered Dayton Street and Locust Street towards the later end of Locust Street that don't have sidewalks? Have you guys looked into that? I'm sure those developments have probably provided funds, right? I'm just wondering, did we spend that money actually on those sidewalks?
We have done a study on extending sidewalks on Locust Street and Dayton Street.
And how'd that go?
We're still evaluating those costs. It's not a small venture. It'd be something that we look to further with potential transportation improvement project in the future, but we have evaluated those costs and are looking at that.
Yeah, so just, you gotta consider those two areas. They're basically like an island, you know, for children, right? They can't ride their bikes there. I grew up off of 62. I could never ride my bike to a friend's house that was out of that area, right? So I think if we could look at spending some money in that space, it would be great.
And just to clarify, when David talked about the planning board approvals, those would be for roadways and sidewalks within or potentially just outside of those. I can't think of an example where the planning board would be able to require a developer to extend a sidewalk.
Yep.
That would be something, and just for context, one of the preliminary studies for the Locust Street in particular, the cost was more than our total appropriation from the state, which was $877,000. So it would be a project that would require either a multiple years or potentially bonding to do. So it would be considerably different from what we're normally doing here, which is replacement and maintenance.
Okay, thank you.
Wally?
So on management, what are we doing with like the grindings, the tailings? I mean, last year we got stuck, like particularly the Conant Street project, dumping them at the Holton Richmond, which we moved to the landfill, which as far as I know, we're still moving out. Why are we moving it so much?
So the grindings are set up, we can have the contractor haul them out and haul them away, or we can keep them if we want to use the material. The material that was dumped at the Holton Richmond, it was chosen to dump it there to use at a later date. And I believe it was used for the landfill roads. So that was it was chosen to do that. It's we get to select that.
As opposed to the pile that's still at the landfill?
Right,
For the
there's
landfill
still a pile at
roads?
the landfill that has a plan for it. That's being stockpiled there for future use on those roads.
All right. Thank you.
Arthur?
All set.
Mike?
I'm good, thanks.
Questions from the audience? Mark?
Thank you. I have requests from individual neighborhoods. Are these costs, the $100,000 or $285,000, is that allocated to certain projects? Is there a list of streets and sidewalks that you're going to be doing? Just to pinpoint it where it's going to. So if you could identify that, that would be great. Thank you.
David?
So the entire amount has not been earmarked yet. We keep part of it for things that blow up and get in very poor condition. Some of our earmarks that this funding would be used for are, one of our big priorities is to do the paving of the senior center parking lot. That needs to be paved. We also need to do the walkways around the library, the concrete walk and the hot top walkways around there. That's an earmark here. We have some road patches that we have to do, short sections of road where Chapter 90 doesn't apply. Wenham Street has a couple of those, Burley Street. The roads that we're not going to get to for paving for a few years, we'll be doing sections of that. In addition to that, we have our crack sealing program where we do roads that are 4 years old, something like that, go around and seal the cracks. Between $30,000 and $45,000 of this fund is earmarked for that. And then also our handicap ramp improvements around town. If we see a ramp that's out of spec that needs to be fixed, we would do those around town, and we have a list of those handicap ramps also.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead, Bill.
Again, Bill Bradstreet, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. I see the yellow pipes, and I believe they are gas lines. They keep doing the holes, and they're working their way around the Danvers Square. They patch them. Are we gonna live with patches, or are they gonna pay to repave them? Not us. Not us. Are they gonna pay to resurface the whole roadway because they put all these patches in, because they've done their work?
So yes, the National Grid owes us additional paving out there. We're in negotiations with them right now as to, do we do another semi-permanent patch before we get in there and do more work in the square? We have a couple other projects in the pipeline as far as the new lighting of the square. Do we need more conduits of that? There's actually even proposals, do we change the alignment of the square itself at Elm Street? That's a very long crosswalk when you come across there. And it actually makes the whole timing of the light off just because that crosswalk is so long on that diagonal. So we're working as a part of a big project on, there's gonna be an overhaul of the whole Maple Streets through the square. It'll be tied into as the Maple Square project is finishing up. So yes, the gas company owes us some more paving out there. Not sure exactly yet of those parameters.
Dave, while you're up and mentioning the project, what's the timeline on that project? The gas main project that's
Steven's
going on.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, so the gas main project, they're going to continue out from downtown and cross over Elm and Cone Street intersection and tie in right about Porter Street. So they have about another 3 to 4 months worth of work out there.
Okay.
To be completed.
Great. Thank you. Is there a motion on Article 13?
Move Article 13.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. 14.
Now that the town engineer is comfortable, I'll invite him right back up for his annual presentation on the roadway layout and acceptance program.
Thank you, Steve. So Article 14, it's our annual roadway layout and acceptance of public ways. We typically, the engineering division will pick 4 to 5 streets a year to move towards town meeting acceptance. This year, we specifically only have 3 streets, which are Riverview Avenue, Cemetery Road, and Fowler Street. So the first part of the process is to lay out the roads and approval from the select board. The next step of the process for town meeting acceptance, to lay these out and take them by eminent domain. And the last part of the process, after town meeting approval is granted, then we record these at the registry of deeds and then become public ways. The streets, which then get allocated to our chapter 90, which we've spoken about already this evening. And I'll take any questions on those specific article if you have any.
Any questions on the acceptance of roadways article? No? Questions from the audience? No? Okay. Is there a motion?
Move the article.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. 15.
Thank you. Article 15 is the actual program that allows us to continue the acceptance of public ways or private ways and turn them into public ways. To date, we've done about approximately 23 miles. This initially started in 2001. About 125 roadways, and we typically average a cost between $5,000 and $6,000 per roadway when we go to do our initial investigation of which streets would we then look at become public ways in the town.
Okay. Questions from the board? Questions from the audience? It takes $5,000 or $6,000 to do it. What do we? How much does that gain us each year in Chapter 90 funds? When, how long does it take us to recoup those funds?
As soon as they become public ways, we can then, when we put in our paperwork for Chapter 90, then we can then get the allocation from the state.
Okay.
Typically we're doing so if we're doing mileage-wise, it depends on
the length of the street. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Questions from the audience? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. 16.
Article 16, the landfill gas collection system flare station. As we've already kind of talked about, alluded to, we do an operated landfill at this point, and we do operate and maintain a landfill gas extraction system. Part of that methane gas extraction system to mitigate methane migration, we have a flare station that burns off that methane located at the landfill. We're permitted through Mass DEP for 30 years to operate and maintain that flare station. Right now, it's at the useful end of its life, and we're requesting to do a replacement of that existing flare station to maintain our permit status and approval with what we got from Mass DEP.
Mike?
I'm good, thank you.
Arthur?
I'm all set.
Wally?
Who's the town landfill consultant?
Bulbrick Engineering and Construction.
Thank you.
That's it? Aaron?
No questions.
What's the lifespan of the new one?
20, 25 years.
Okay, so they should get us there. Okay.
All set.
Okay. Questions from the audience? Bill?
Ian Bill Bradstreet, town meeting member, precinct 1. Oh, please. You're burning, you're producing energy by burning. Are we able to, or can we recapture some energy from this gas that's being burnt off to light or burn up or some useful project? It just seems a waste to just burn the gas off without getting something back from doing so.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, we do not generate enough power from the methane extraction system to be able to generate what Mr. Bradstreet was speaking about. Again, this is permanent. We're required to do as part of our landfill closure process with the Department of Environmental Protection.
Thank you. Is there are there any other questions from the audience? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. 16.
Article 17.
Excuse me, 17.
Maintenance dredging can be found on page 22 in the budget. As noted in the explanation, we set aside a small amount each year that we will eventually use when we're ready to start the early permitting and design associated with the next dredging project that the town will do, which is slated to commence within the next 3 or 4 years. It'll be a sizable dredging project. The last time we did one, it was for 2 rivers. We're I think, scheduled to do all 4 rivers next time around. So this will be a large project, but this appropriation each year is simply to help get that process started so that we can start to develop some cost numbers that we can bring back to the town meeting.
Paul?
No questions.
Eric?
No questions.
Aaron?
None.
Wally? Arthur?
Set?
Mike?
Nope.
Questions from the audience? Is there a motion?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. 29.
Article 29, which you'll find on page 30 in your warrant book. We've debated internally in years past renaming the roadway acceptance program after Bill Bradstreet. We've also discussed internally renaming this article after Dave McKenna,
Yeah.
because he would symbolically vote against it each year as a member of the Finance Committee, because he didn't believe in it. But essentially, we are required by the state each year to take this vote, which indemnifies them against damages they cause when they are improving the drainage system in the town of Danvers.
Mike?
I forget, are you the one who votes against this now, or?
I voted against it last year. Do you want to vote against it
No,
this year?
I'm all in favor of it, so.
Arthur?
I'm good.
When you say they, you mean the state?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Eric? Paul?
I'll carry the torch this year.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the audience? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
The article passes.
Thank you, Paul. Article 18 is on page 22, and these projects are all similar in nature, so we've listed the article numbers on the left-hand side, but really page 22 is where they start, and I would turn it over to the town engineer to talk about the projects that we're proposing this year to be funded through the sewer division.
Thank you. I think I'll go through each one, or would you like me to go through one and then ask questions, or?
You can go through them all, and we'll ask questions independently.
Okay.
Yeah. But then vote on them individually.
Individual, okay.
Yeah.
Article 18, the Adam Street culvert replacement. This is an existing 24-inch reinforced concrete pipe that's been segregated from the existing stream brook next to on Adam Street. It's a channelized brook that carries flow from some of the neighborhood near the Rebecca Nurse land property. There's also, in addition, it runs right parallel against two existing residences. The brook is right up against them. There's also a retaining wall that needs to be replaced as part of that work. This article for $790,000 would allow us to do the construction work to replace the existing culvert, restabilize the stream bed, and also restabilize the slope with it and the retaining wall against the abutters on Adam Street. Article 19, Perkins Road sewer main replacement. As this past year, when we were doing our annual CCTV and cleaning, we discovered that there was a sewer main that was installed on the old Woodville subdivision that didn't have the proper slope, meaning pitch or elevation run from high to low for gravity sewer main. This was causing backups within some of the homes on Perkins Road. This article would allow us to design a project to replace the existing sewer main, give it the proper slope, and relay the services to each of those homes so that we wouldn't have this issue occur again. Article 20, wastewater facilities improvements. This is an article that we usually do every couple of years to help with improvements and replacements of our existing wastewater pumping station pumps and electrical controls at each of our 15 pumping stations in town. Article 21, the Summer Street pump station specifically. We have an existing generator there that's over 30 years old. It's at the end of its useful life. We've done what we can to try and repair it as much as we can, but at this point, based on the recommendations from the vendors we've had look at it, they're all recommending a full replacement. So the article for $350,000 will allow us to do a design permit and replace the existing pump station generator for Summer Street. This is our largest wastewater pumping station in town, so it takes a lot of the flow from the surrounding areas off of Summer Street and North Street. Lastly, Mill Pond Dam safety inspections. This is required under the DCR program for dam safety. Every 5 years, our hazard dams, high hazard dams, are required to be inspected through a third-party consultant. This would take care of the Mill Pond Dam. If you don't remember, last year we did the Meadow Dam. They fall one after another for the year. This is due next year, so we're putting it in the article for this town meeting in order to make sure we hit the deadlines for when it's due back to DCR for the inspection report. Lastly, the drainage maintenance warrant article, number 28, drainage maintenance article. This is typically $25,000 with all three highway divisions with any emergency repairs to our stormwater systems within the town, our drainage type, catch basin replacements within the public ways.
Great, thank you. Paul?
I have no
Questions?
questions. One article at a time, or?
Any of them?
No, I really don't have any questions on any of this. no.
Okay. Eric?
No questions.
Aaron?
No questions.
I'm good here.
Arthur?
All set.
Mike?
With the Mill Pond Dam, was it 2 years ago, I guess, it got about as high as we've had it in a while. There were no indications at that point that there were problems with it, right?
Correct, no.
Yeah.
Questions from the audience?
The question I have is that we are doing these dam inspections on an annual basis, or semi-annual, whatever it turns out to be. What kind of findings are we getting? And is this inspection resulting in improvements, or does it identify deficiencies?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the program specifically for our high hazard dams are every 5 years, which is required by DCR, which is from the previous, the Mother's Day storm, which really kicked off this phase 1 inspection program. We do, when our third party consultant does come out, they do the full inspection, they do note any deficiencies that they do see, they give us the report, we then, as DPW, go out there and make those repairs as necessary.
Great.
So we do the repairs
We
internally.
do the repairs internally, correct.
Thank you. Any other questions? Is there a motion on Article 18?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Article 19.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Article 20.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. 21.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. 25.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed?
I think
And
we've already,
20.
we've already done drainage maintenance, didn't we?
Was a different one.
Was it a different one? I thought we did 28.
And 28.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
We did
Oh,
drainage
no,
line.
no one's opposed.
No.
Great.
I thought we did.
All right. That was interesting. 24. Greenleaf Drive.
Article 24, Greenleaf Drive. This is an article to authorize the select board to take by eminent domain permanent and temporary easements at 7 College Pond Road, 9 College Pond Road, 40 Summer Street, 44 Summer Street, and 6 Greenleaf Drive for the work in process to eliminate the existing Greenleaf Drive wastewater pumping station. This pumping station was originally put in our capital plan for removal based on a new sewer line that was put in by SESD a couple decades ago. Now that the pipe has been installed, College Pond Drive has been completed, we can now run a gravity sewer main from College Pond to Greenleaf Drive and actually eliminate the pump station, taking it off our asset list. So this article, now that we've done the design, we've done the permitting, we've gotten permitting approved through Conservation Commission, we know now the exact route we need to go based on that determination, and these are specific houses that would require temporary and permanent easements from in order to complete the project.
Mike?
I'd be interested to see what my fellow member on the other side says about this.
I'm all set.
No, that fast.
No. I know which one you're talking about.
All right.
We have to wait till the end to get to them.
No.
Wally, you're all set. Aaron?
I'm just curious, what is the impact to these houses?
So we would be taking a permanent easement and temporary easements on, in order to install the sewer main. During that construction process, this would be having construction equipment going through their properties. We'd have to obviously restore it back to existing condition as best we can, or in better condition. We also have done appraisals on these properties, so we'd be paying fair market value to the homeowners for the process of taking the land for the easement in order to facilitate the installation of the sewer.
And how do the homeowners feel? Are they supportive of this?
We do have, most have been supportive in general of it. I think it's hard for any homeowner to understand the impact that it may have to their house and their property, but I've tried to sit down with each of the homeowners on a one-on-one meeting as many times as I can to help them be sure that, you know, whatever we do or do damage, we'll obviously replace. We have done this before in the past. It's nothing new. We're able to facilitate this. We'll work with the contractor, work with whoever they want us to work with as far as restoration processes. Sometimes it's just hard for them to recognize what the benefit will be in the future, but hopefully at the end of the project, everyone will be happy with the outcome.
How long do you expect it to take?
So we're hoping it's going to take at least a year by the time we bid and award the project. We're hoping to start this fall, if possible, and then continue into the next year, obviously working through the winter and then doing the restoration process with any of the grass, lawns that need to be replaced. We'll do that in the spring, summer of next year.
So the year includes the restoration?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me.
Eric?
Couple questions. The book references acquired by purchase and gift, et cetera. That's been ruled out where the eminent domain is the ask.
The eminent domain is per council recommendation, this is the language that you're required to use when going through the process for a town.
But this is what we're going to end up in.
So I think it's important for people to always remember that the fact that we're using eminent domain does not mean that we have to pay market value. We
Okay.
do. We use eminent domain as a community because it takes rid of, it rids us of any potential title problems that may have been there in the past. So we're not worried about whether one of these homeowners has a bad title problem because a trustee didn't sign a document 75 years ago. So the eminent domain gets rid of that.
That's helpful. And then what part of the property is being impacted? So when we talk about an easement, you know, just the dimensions of the easement and what part of the property on the easement. So is that like in the back, you know, driveway in the front, or is it in the back?
Since it's different properties and different orientation of the alignment, we're trying to align ourselves on the sides of the property outside of what their setbacks are, so they still want to do some type of construction or addition to the homes. They could still potentially do that. One property, we're actually in the front of their lawn, but far enough away from their house. And then one of the other properties, again, we're on the side rear of their lawn. Again, it's almost in a wetlands area that we wouldn't really affect their existing home or yard.
And what are they expecting to see after all the work is done? So the work is done, things are there. Are they looking at a fence? Are they looking at open land that's just no longer theirs anymore? What is that?
Oh, the land is still there. We just have the easement and rights to maintain the sewer that's underneath the ground.
Got it.
So basically, by the time we're done, it should almost look exactly the same, except a few trees will be shifted when we replant what we take out.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Mike's been anxiously awaiting your comments, Paul.
First question is this project appears to be going in where Greenleaf enters summer down towards the bottom of the hill, not up by the prep, correct?
It's going to be the bottom side of Greenleaf
Yeah.
before you get to the.
Is it running diagonally across properties over towards College Pond? Is that basically what's happening?
Yeah, so if you came down to the bottom where you get the entrance to where the pool is, the old
Yes.
pool,
Yeah.
you then go behind where there's almost like a wetlands area.
Right.
We were going to be going through there and then coming out on the side of 7 and 9 College Pond Drive into the street and tying in a manhole out there.
How many homes does it actually affect?
5.
4, 5, 6?
It's 5.
5 homes.
Yeah. It's not up where I live. I haven't heard anything about it, so, but it seems like it's a project that has to be done, should be done. So I have no more further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Questions from the audience? Bill?
That's in your neighborhood.
As town meeting members in Precinct 4, we received a letter from one of the abutters on November 1st, 2022, no, check that, 2021, October 27, 2021. Dear town meeting members in Precinct 4, we are reaching out to you. We have requested a meeting with the Danvers Conservation Commission, et cetera, et cetera. Make a long story short, we've gone to a number of meetings with some of these folks, particularly 7 College Pond Road, Mr. and Mrs. Jim and Maureen Larrabee.
Larrabee.
And I talked with Mr. Larrabee again today. It's interesting, some of the members asked the question about eminent domain and how the residents felt about this. Mr. King has been fabulous. I've been out in the field with him, with these neighbors, and he's answered everything so honest and upfront until it came to eminent domain. And then he said that process is how they determine the values. And I'm hoping maybe the town manager, through you, Mr. Chairman, can help us understand, how do you, when you say fair market value, you're taking a portion of their land, they will no longer be able to build on it, and you predetermine, you just give them a figure.
No.
And it was difficult. It's been a tough process. We requested, the Conservation Committee came out and did a site assessment. I unfortunately did not know about that and wasn't there. But I talked with, again, Mr. Larrabee today. He said, they were, Conservation Commission came out and said it looks like the project is needed. But there were like 3 different options of how you could have done this project. The town chose the option it did for a multitude of reasons. My question is, can we make this process a little bit more open for our residents? Because the Larrabees didn't want to come here tonight. They got overwhelmed with the process over the last 2 years. But they were basically told, here's the eminent domain figure, and when they asked Mr. King, how did you come up with that figure? I would ask him to answer that question. How did you come up with that figure?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we hired a third-party appraiser to evaluate the lands that we were potentially going to take eminent domain takings on. And obviously, they compared those same lots with lots similar in Danvers based on square footage of the land use, the house, trees that we're going to be potentially taking down. All those costs were rolled into one specific lump sum. It then came to a specific figure that I then shared with some of the homeowners.
Thank you.
So I guess that was all the main concerns. Like I say, the process, Mr. King and his team, the Conservation Committee, they all really worked hard with these neighbors. But it is overwhelming when the town comes to you and says they're going to take rights away from you. These folks have been there for over 30 years. They built that house 30 years ago, and their backyard is going to be changed considerably. So I guess I just wanted to ask if we're comfortable that the processes we're using, thank you, Steve, are the best we can do, through you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Steve?
I would say this is an example where I think we're very lucky. Before Stephen King, we had Rick Rogers, and not all towns have town engineers. And Mr. King said he sits individually with the homeowners and answers all their questions and tries to get them as comfortable as they can with, as Mr. Bates mentioned, this is a change. We talk often of the greater good. So in maintaining and managing a sewer system that's going to efficiently and effectively move waste that we don't want to think about or see to the SESD, we'll be able to take offline a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment that we won't have to maintain and replace on a moving forward basis. And I know that a lot of thought goes into the design and layout. A lot of it is technical engineering and rise over run and making sure that we can get things where they need to go. And as Mr. King said, a lot of thought goes into trying to line these pipes up with property edges. We would never want to put a pipe in a place that's going to impact someone's ability to use their property. I'm comfortable with the process, and again, I know Stephen works very hard to help the residents understand the why in terms of what's happening.
Thank you. Aaron?
Just one more question. We talk about fair market value. At what date? And do we make adjustments to that if there's inflation or change in material, anything like that?
The appraisal was done about 18 months ago. I mean, I think if the homeowners thought that there may be a change or something that we would look at, we could definitely hire the consultant to come back out, reassess it before we go into the public hearing process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? Mark?
The question I have is more related to who's going to pay these costs? Is it going to come out of the water and sewer budget? Or is it going to come from the taxpayer-supported portion of the town budget? And one of the things that, this is being done for the purpose of these 5 homes to give them sewerage, basically. Provide sewerage. Right, right. That's right. So this is continuing our efforts to make sure that everyone in town has sewerage
But just,
available.
just to clarify, unless I'm mistaken, the sewer's there, we are moving to a gravity sewer and eliminating the pumping station for that neighborhood.
Yeah, the flow is coming. The issue is, and I didn't ask this question prior to this, but we are spending considerable amounts on each one of these projects, and after you add them all up, it adds up to quite a bit of money. How is our water and sewer available cash? Because we're saying here, water retained earnings or sewer retained earnings, that's how it's gonna get paid. So I'm just interested, and I've asked this question in many town meetings, how is this going to affect our rates? Because rates are not gonna go down. This is a project that needs to be done to provide them service. However, at what cost? Thank you.
Rodney?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, for both sewer and upcoming water, all uses of retained earnings still maintain over 10% in retained earnings as a percentage of revenue. So it's within our fiscal policies. The Greenleaf eminent domain takings are part of the Greenleaf authorization we authorized 2 years ago.
Thank you.
To be paid out of sewer receipts.
Retained, thank you. Anything else on Article 24?
Move to accept Article 24.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Two projects for the water division, a shorter list but a larger number, and you can find these starting on page 24 in the warrant booklets, and I would turn it over directly to Mr. King.
Thank you. First one, Article 22, Water Main Replacement Program. This is a continuation to our next year 6 through 10, 20-year capital improvement program for our water main distribution system. The $2.9 million would allow us to continue our work on Locust Street, the Locust Street water main removal, along with replacing the remaining water main on Green Street as well. And then continue on with design of the next portions of Locust Street. Obviously, you know that's a long public way. We're going to have to do that in various phases as we continue. So this $2.9 million will allow us to continue the program and continue with the bidding process for allowing us to continue the water main replacement program.
Okay. Paul?
Probably, maybe you can answer this, but how long will this whole project take? Water main replacement project? It's been going.
Specific to the street, or the program is, we've
Not this one, no, but it seems like we're here every year, and that's probably what it is.
We're recommending this year to fund this work out of the retained earnings, but several years ago, town meeting approved a bond authorization of, I believe, $5 million. $10 million, which allowed for this work to be done on an annual basis. We've reached the end of that authorization, but our retained earnings were in a position, based on management of the fund, that we're able to pay cash for a couple of years before we come back for the next bond authorization. But to answer your question, this work will be ongoing forever, most likely. We have more than 100 miles of main, and we have to, some places it's 100 years old, so there's always going to be main replacement that has to happen.
Sounds reasonable to me. Thank you.
Eric?
I just appreciate that you guys are really on top of this stuff year after year. We pay it, either we do it now or we do it later. So I just, no questions on it.
No questions.
And it will always cost more later, so.
And always cost more later. That's
Mike? Mike?
We don't have anyone who is on a well, private well, are we, or do we? Is everybody?
People that are on private wells.
How many in Danvers do we have now that are in?
I don't know the number off the top of my head. I think Board of Health has that list, but I know there's quite a few people on.
There are quite a, and is it the same as with the sewer? If the water line goes by their house, they're able to, we charge them still a fee? Or, I know with the sewer, once the sewer line goes by, you have to connect.
Yeah, that's mandatory. Yeah, you have to connect if there's a sewer in front of your.
But you don't have to connect if you've got public water?
Correct.
Is there any possibility that those people will have the similar PFAS type of requirements placed upon them when?
Tough question to ask right now, because until the EPA puts out the final regulations, I mean, we've been studying and monitoring that situation, but until we know the final outcome of what they decide to do, I'm not sure what private homeowners are going to do who have wells.
Yeah, I know a lot of people have wells that they don't use it for their consumption, they use it for irrigation, but I'm a little surprised that we have that many that are on private wells for consumption.
Paul?
Could I ask a non-related question?
Sure.
Do we have any homeowners that still have septic systems in this town?
Yes, we do. There are certain remote areas of town that people still have septic systems.
Where would they be, by chance?
If you can believe it or not, there are some sections on Andover Street,
Really?
Route 114, that the sewer main hasn't been able to get reached out that far in order to take those people off their septic systems.
Thank you. Thank you.
We do send an annual mailing out to make sure people are maintaining their septic systems. They do have them, so we do have a list. And as we go through that list, we do sometimes hear people, I got off my septic system, I'm on sewer now, so we're just trying to make sure we're monitoring that program as well.
Thank you.
Questions from the audience? Nova?
Nova Samade, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. I'm not sure what kind of shape the water mains that we're replacing are in, but are we able to, with these new ones, are we able to conserve water? Like, were we losing a ton of water through the old ones and now we're saving some, since we have such water issues?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, yeah, so the areas we're targeting are ones that we've had multiple breaks, 15 to 20 plus breaks over the course of the last 5 to 10 years. So a break or two a year, we do lose a considerable amount of water. Replacing these pipes, with newer pipes versus the 60 to 100-year-old pipes that we have in the ground, allows us to obviously conserve and not lose as much water because they're not breaking as much.
Great.
Good question.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? Is there a motion?
Move the article.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. 23.
Article 23, this is Putnam Lane Booster Station improvements. The article requests $140,000 to replace some of the mechanical components, including the motor control panel and the pump control panels within the station. The water booster station, this area services most of Putnam Lane and some of the other subdivisions, Saratoga Lane, off of Putnam Lane. So these are preliminary just costs to make improvements to the station, keep them running as smoothly as we can.
Great. Paul?
No questions.
Eric?
No questions.
Aaron?
None.
Nothing. Mike?
So Putnam Lane's been around but Saratoga Lane's a fairly new subdivision, correct?
Yeah, the booster station was early 1990s.
Okay. All right, and basically we're saying, once the developer has paid for that initial booster station, then we're on the hook for the rest of it.
We've accepted it, yeah, we've accepted a roadway subdivision, we've accepted the booster station.
Great, okay.
Questions from the audience? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. 26.
With two articles remaining. First is our buildings improvement. This is a catch-all where we itemize and list out all of the improvements that are planned across the town, school, and school buildings and the library. And as you can see in bold on the screen, we fund the portions of this based on the type of work that's being done. If it's a water-related project, often we can use our water use mitigation program. If it's a lighting project or electrical in nature, we often will use the electric department. The vast majority of it each year is funded through free cash. And Dave Lane can provide a summary, and then we'll be happy to take questions.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, would you like me to run through each item real quickly?
Yes, that'd be great.
Sure. So our proposed school improvements this year, we start out with the first one at our 3 elementary schools, Highland, Thorpe, and Riverside. We need to replace the intercoms at the front doors. Those are where we buzz people in and out. It's a safety issue. We need them to be reliable. The total cost of that is $4,000 for all 3. Over at Great Oak School, we recommend continuing our program of replacing the 25-year-old carpet with vinyl tile. We'd like to do 4 classrooms. That's what we've been doing many years now, at $30,000 for those 4 classrooms. Still over at Great Oak, we have one of our exterior walls that we need to repoint the mortar. It's a maintenance process to make sure that we're not getting water penetrating through the brick wall. It's one of the original walls when we did the renovation. The cost of that is $8,500. Still at Great Oak School, we have an exterior gym door set that needs to be replaced. It's corroded, it's been repaired, but it doesn't sit right, doesn't chuck right, and that's $15,000 for that door. Over at Thorpe School, we have the handicap accessible chairlift that goes from the cafeteria up to the education level, the classroom level. We just barely got the old one fixed. It's working, however, it needs to be replaced. It's time. The total replacement of that with a brand new one is $60,000. Jump over to Riverside School, the exterior dorm alarms. These are the doors all the way around the outside of the building. We have alarms so we know, or the teachers know if the door has been opened or shut. The alarm goes off. They're not dependable right now. We've had to fix them a lot, so we recommend replacing those systems at a cost of $6,500. And over at Riverside Schools, they redid the door locks at the renovation, having a hard time with the actual key cylinders in the doors. We need to replace those, match them up to how we have them at the other schools. So the cost of those interior door locks is $15,000 just at Riverside School. Riverside School also has an exterior gym door set that needs to be replaced due to corrosion and wear. That's $15,000, just like Great Oak School. And then over at Riverside, we have 2 HVAC units that need to be replaced. One is at Riverside and one is at Highland, and the cost of those 2 units are $18,000. They're old, inefficient, and they're at the end of their useful life. We've been on a water fountain upgrade program being funded through the WUMP program. So we'd like to replace 8 more of those fountains. They've been well received in all the schools. We recommend replacing 8 fountains at a cost of $40,000. Holton Richmond, we redid new art rooms when we did the renovation in '02. However, the sink traps in the art rooms have been clogged, corroded. They need to be replaced. We can't keep them as clean as they need to be any longer. So it's recommended to replace those sink traps in the Holton Richmond art rooms at a cost of $9,000. Also at Holton Richmond, and we also look around all the schools for a lighting enhancement project that we can do. The lights that run up the stairs at Holton Richmond, they're a regular incandescent bulb, they're not efficient, and they're expensive bulbs to get. So we're recommending to replace those bulbs with new LED fixtures. They'll still look very nice up in those hallways, provide good light, and the cost of $18,000. Cost of $7,500 that would be funded through our electric energy efficiency program. Both at the high school and Holton Richmond, we have sets of bleachers there that we do ongoing maintenance and small repairs. They're at a point we need to do some significant repairs to those to keep them in good operating condition and to keep them very safe. The cost of the recommended repairs is $18,000. So that's in the field house and in Holton Richmond. At the high school, we have 3 water heaters. One of them has failed. We need to replace it. If the cost of that one water heater is $27,000. The way it's looking, I'd probably expect another one next year and probably one the year after that, the way water heaters go. Over at the high school, the building is heated by 6 small boilers. They're very efficient boilers. They have small LED screens on the top of them. Those LED screens that we use to control the boilers, the interface, have all failed and need to be replaced. The cost to replace those screens is $21,000 on all 6 boilers. Over at the high school, we have a floor cleaning machine. It's a large machine you ride on to clean the floors. It's at the end of its useful life and needs to be replaced. Not inexpensive, it's $26,000 for the floor cleaning machine. And last on the school is our standard article for classroom modifications, $25,000 for some unknown change in the school program or modifications that need to be made at the schools. Questions, Mr. Chairman, or should I keep going?
Keep going.
Endicott Park, there's a number of repairs to do at Endicott Park. We work closely with park staff, the buildings division staff. We need some repointing of the masonry walls of the garage. We are working with actually students from Essex Tech to do upgrades in the wood shop, which is the electric area underneath the hay barn. And then also, they've got the corn cob that's gonna be rehabilitated. That's be a joint, a student and some volunteer work on renovating the corn cob. And then we need to start working on the wall of the conference room. That's where the big doors, we've got rot in those big doors and windows. We need to start working on that. We believe it's going to eventually turn into a bigger project than what we have some money here, but we at least need to do some work to keep water from penetrating and find out what we've got going on there on that wall for rot. At the fire stations this year, in Central Fire, we have a first floor conference room that's used by all the firefighters for training, and it has an old floor that's in poor condition. It's been recommended to replace that old carpeting with a non-slip floor with a long lifespan. It'll fit how they use that room. $22,500. We started painting last year in Central Fire. We still need to get up on the second floor and paint the hallways and the offices up on the second floor of Central Fire. So we'd like to complete that painting work at a cost of $5,000. And then on Central Fire, while we're up on that second floor, we'd like to do LED lighting upgrades, again through the electric efficiency program at $20,000. That's the lighting upgrades, the second floor of Central Fire. Over at the library, in the library, the back children's room, we're getting water penetrating through that wall into the children's room. It's found, we've nailed it down where it is. There's an area of waterproofing of that vertical wall that's failed. It's covered by soil. We need to get in there, dig the soil out, redo the waterproofing on that wall. So it's going to be quite a project. So we've estimated the cost of that at $35,000. Jump over to the Twyfield, the snack bar and press box over there. You can drive by and see that there's some work on the exterior fascia boards, trim, shingles that we need to do. Estimated cost of those repairs is $8,500. And lastly, we have the building modification. This is for an unknown condition or change in program at one of the town buildings that comes up during the year for $25,000.
Thank you. Mike?
Can we, at some point, it'd be interesting to take a look at, when we look at the budget, not just the, so we appropriate a line item for, I'll use the fire department here, and that includes everything, but it doesn't generally include either what we've bonded in the past to be able to, their share, so to speak, of the bond issue in regards to capital improvements. It doesn't include these types of things. At some point, can we see, when we look at our main town departments, exactly what their cost per year is for us? So it'd be interesting to be able to look at, if we're going to compare, for example, what we do expend in regards to schools and public safety and public works and all these items, to actually get everything in their proper bin, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
and look at it. You know, I'm not gonna change necessarily any of this type of stuff. I appreciate how we get the material presented to us, and I think there's no better way to be able to appropriate it. But it would be interesting to be able to look at some of these town departments and to be able to take a peek at exactly what they do cost us every year total. We sort of do that with the schools already, because the state does that in order for us to get our cost per pupil analysis done. But we really don't do that necessarily when it comes to what we spend on these other areas.
Thank you. Arthur?
I'm all set.
I have a few questions. Residential, we're able to do energy audits and get rebates. Are we able to do that with commercial buildings and get rebates from the state, or?
Yes, we are. So
Yeah.
for electricity, we have a rebate, we have a system that commercial customers can call us up, and we'll send a company out there to do an audit of the building. And we can also do rebates for commercial. Because every commercial business is so different, we do them on a case-by-case basis and try to mirror them to the, just similar in nature or similar in scale to what a residential one is. One of those, we're working with 2 hotels in town that have old, outdated toilets. So they're working with them to try to get water-efficient hydrants in there and use the one, that's on, I jumped into water, but to use that for water. We're doing the same thing on electricity.
I actually meant our buildings that we own. Are
Oh.
we able to get credits from the state for those?
So,
For any rebate, are we able to get rebates if we?
we can't get electric rebates because
Okay.
we're a municipal electric. We can
Okay.
only get rebates from the municipal electric company.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
No, that's okay, thank you. Safety, so school safety is a huge thing, national, right? Are any of our schools less equipped to handle one of these lockdowns that students prepare for in class?
So we actually participate, we have DPW staff that
Yep.
participate in some of the lockdown drills. All the schools have those. And anything that's needed to enhance the school for their lockdown drill, we'll provide. If not, we bring it all the way up to get it paid.
Okay.
There's nothing that they need that I know of that's not been done.
So bulletproof windows and doors, I know Smith School has it, the other schools don't. Is there a plan to upgrade those at the other schools in town?
The schools would be better to answer that than myself. I know putting bulletproof glass in places has been evaluated, and is that the best option? Should they do something else? However, I think the school officials would be better to ask that question.
But the money comes from DPW, or would that be a school budget line item? Just,
If the school found out that they
Okay.
needed a certain glass, they would put a request in through the town manager and DPW
okay, good.
to look for funding.
Thank you. And then last one, we talked about the children's library, the exterior wall. You're gonna have to dig up some of the soil on the exterior.
Yep.
Is that gonna impact the President's Garden for the Danvers Garden Club at all? They have that beautiful garden right outside of there.
No, it's up above that.
Okay, that's
Where
it.
it's just lawn on top.
Okay, thank you.
I feel like that's been an ongoing issue, that wall. Have we,
It has.
okay. And we're gonna really fix it this time?
We're gonna really work at it, yes.
Okay. Eric?
So, listen, my question is more about process. As I'm just going through and I'm calculating, and I'm just thinking about, for each of these estimates that you have, are you generally 3-bid, for each of these projects? And typically, when I 3-bid a project, those things are good for like 30 days. So I'm really interested in your process, how long these quotes are good for when,
So these are all proposals.
okay.
Now, once and they could have a small percentage on there for escalation based on what the cost of living is. Now, when we go out to do the work, we'll get real quotes on it.
Okay. Thank you.
Paul?
I think a couple of questions based on what I've heard from the other members. If you look at the first part of the schools, it's all elementary. Elementary. Okay, so, number one, Riverside and Great Oak and Highlands, I believe they're all built around the same time. At least the architecture looks like that. Am I correct in that?
So, Great Oak, I believe, was the first one.
Yep.
Okay.
Then Riverside and Highlands came. And then all 3 of them were renovated one after the other. in the late 1990s.
That's what I thought, around 1998, I believe.
Correct.
Yeah.
The
And then,
last one to be done was the Great Oak.
so they're 25 years old beyond their last renovation.
Correct. They built in the 50s, then they renovated in the
Right.
90s.
So we're looking at closing in on 30 years?
Yep.
No,
No.
80 years.
80 years. Right.
Well, I'm sure Mr. Bartha wants me not to ask the next question, but are we? Are we?
When folks,
It's 70 years, but
when folks
70, yeah,
talked
okay.
about the,
still,
He didn't go to the Danvers Public Schools. so it's
Clearly.
not
You're
skilled.
absolutely right, mister. So anyway, we're looking at this, are we in a situation where I'm looking at the three schools. Where are we in their lifespan at this particular stage?
when we built the new Smith School and people talked about that being the last school, I
Yeah.
think what was unstated was in this cycle.
Right.
Because these buildings will continue to need investment for as long as we use them. I think, the, part of the answer to that depends on, as we're maintaining these buildings annually, what the condition of those buildings is 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now. There's been talk that we certainly will do partial renovations of these buildings. It may not be what we saw with the Smith School, where the construction, both the design and the materials used to build that school, were both out of date and also failing. We had sort of metal walls with holes in them that we were trying to patch based on the state-of-the-art, cutting-edge design that was done in the 70s on that. So I think it's premature to answer that. One of the things we know as well about the MSBA, we typically partner with the Mass School Building Association when we do these schools. As we saw with the Smith School, there's it's a policy decision that's been made. They are trying to build fewer larger schools rather than many smaller schools. So there may become a point in time, whether that's in 5 years or 15 years or 25 years, where the MSBA might be partnering with the town and recommending that we look at 4 elementary schools rather than 5. But those are future decisions, and we don't have sort of clear answers on those today. The projects we're working on now, we finished the roof at Highlands, and Riverside is next in terms of sort of a somewhat larger scale
All right,
project.
so as we go into these, let's just say these 3 schools, because they're the oldest, obviously, and we're closing in on 80 years, okay? But I think Aaron just brought up something that was on my mind too, which was the glass in these particular buildings, because everybody knows what's going on around the country. If we were to get into some type of a renovation at some point with these schools, maybe it would be major, maybe it'd be additions, it might be worth our while to start looking at bulletproof glass.
Yeah,
That's just me speaking out.
It's been discussed already.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, because I appreciate her bringing this up, because I thought about it for a while, and I didn't want to start something that would be, overly sensitive, but it's something we have to be aware of. All right. And the last question I have on it is I was just concerned, what were the bleacher problems at the Houghton Richmond? Are they interior? Or the exterior on the fields, or?
So the Holton Richmond, they're bolted to the wall of the gym, and they
Okay.
move in and out many times all
Yeah,
day
yeah,
long.
yeah.
So it's the parts and pieces where they move in and out.
Right.
The ones at the high school, remember, we pick those up and move them all over the place. So
Mm-hmm.
it's all the fittings where they're moving back and forth. And
Right.
because they're so tall and heavy, we want everything to be tight and work just right. We don't want anything to be loose or out of, any loose or worn. So we have to replace, fittings where they move, especially where they accordion out and back in. The
Okay.
railings move out, and then we need the railings to be very sturdy on the sides.
Thank
So
you.
It's actually, my staff calls it, normal wear and tear, but they get
Right.
moved around a lot.
All right, thank you very much. That's it for me.
Thanks. Questions from the audience? Bill?
Again, Bill Bradstreet, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. When I talk about the elementary school entrance intercoms, that's a one-way or two-way audio system. Are they tied in, or are they part of a whole unit that you can actually see who you're talking to?
So you're asking if they have like a video screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, for safety, if nothing else. Even if you can't hear them, you want to be able to see them, or both.
Yes, all the front doors either have a window or a screen so people can see who exactly is outside that door before they push the button to allow an entrance.
Thank you. Anything else? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of Article 26?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. 27.
Mr. Chairman, our grounds improvements that we recommend tonight, we start with Plains Park over at the Brown 2 field. Our grounds division has been working, and they took a look at the outfield of Brown 2 and have come up with a system they can put some under drains in to actually drain off that field and make it more playable in wet conditions. It's something we've been dealing with for a number of years for the cost of $12,000. And that would be our staff and contractors both working on that. Over at John George Park, we have the softball field that we need to do. It's relatively routine maintenance, but it gets to this level every few years where we have to cut back the edge of the sod, pull the clay back, and then relay new sod so it's a flat edge around the edges of the infield at a cost of $4,000. We like to put some money in for the rail trail maintenance and resurfacing every year. We proposed $8,000 that would go to the rail trail, and we work right now with the Danvers Rail Trail Committee on how to spend that. Over at the Highland School, we have a very nice bridge through the woods that connects the senior center to the Highland Bridge, an Eagle Scout DPW project. We need to do at least the decking on that. And we also need to do the approach ramps, decking, approach ramps, maybe a little work on the railings, but they look okay for now, but definitely have to do the decking at the cost of $3,500. The exterior water bubblers, we have a system where we're going out to our parks and replacing those, the exterior water bubblers. It's been well received. We'd recommend replacing with John George Park and over Bradstreet Ave, cost of $14,000 through our WUMP program. And back to Endicott Park. Endicott Park, all our wooden fences around Endicott Park, we've worked with the director over there and other staff to identify 600 feet of 3-rail fence and a couple of gates at a cost of $15,000 that needs to be replaced. It's literally rotting and falling down, being put up back up every day. And then we put in here some money for the gravel on the roadway. It's in that $8,000 that would buy surfacing for those gravel roads.
Mike, anything?
Are the Bradstreet Park the one's the biggest pain in the neck out of all the bubblers?
It's a wonderful park, and we actually had people out there cleaning it up this weekend on Earth Day, so.
That's it.
Nothing.
Well,
So, back to Bradstreet and John George Park, are the water bubblers, for lack of a better term, really $7,000 a piece?
Yeah, that's what they cost.
Okay, thank you.
They're wicked nice.
John George, so you assessed just the all fields, and just the softball field seemed like it needed to be repaired, or did the other fields as well? They all kind of are a part of each other.
So all the fields get work every spring. They get clay, they get graded, but we pick 1 or 2 fields a year that we actually cut them back, or sometimes 3 that we actually cut back and really do some major repairs to.
So do you plan on updating the soccer fields there at some point? Those get flooded. I'm a frequent user of them because I coach town soccer, and I'm permanently replacing my shoes probably every season because they're flooded.
The drainage on the John George, that's tough.
It's
We're
pretty bad.
Right there, right in the floodplain of the river. No quick, easy fix to that I can jump at tonight.
Okay. Endicott Park, I just have one suggestion, also a frequent user, the actual playground, that gate, if it could automatically close after it's opened, children escape because people forget or it just doesn't close. Dogs can sometimes sneak in off leash and then, they harass the kids in there. So that's just one suggestion. It's kind of safety too.
The gate from the parking lot or the gate from the dog park side?
No, I'm sorry, the actual playground.
Playground, I
The
thought,
playground
yeah.
gate, yeah. Kids can sneak in and out because it's not closing, and then animals can get in as well.
Sure, I'll check it out with Mr. Sanborn.
Okay, thank you.
Eric?
Those are some good ones. My question is how, I felt like you were reading my mind with some of these things, for things that I just come across when out and about in the community. How does it rise to your list of priority when you guys are selecting? Do you get resident input? Someone like Aaron say, send an email and kind of you accumulate that data?
So the recreation department really helps us with that, because they get a lot of data in from their leagues and through their recreation board. We also keep track of all the work orders that we get in, calls into our work order system. So the grounds division gets together with recreation, finds out all the issues, lays out all the big long list of everything we think we can fix or address that year, and then we as a team prioritize from there.
So it helps when residents communicate through the channels.
Absolutely.
There's no shortage of field repairs that are needed. Unfortunately, we can only do so many each year, but all the fields need work, because the fields are used a lot. So, but from a recreation standpoint, everybody wants better fields.
But do they ask in the appropriate
People
places?
ask, people, and the recreation committee and recreation department hears a lot from
Good.
people that want fields fixed.
And actually, we took a lot of input. We spent a lot of time this year with the town manager and the whole team looking at the tennis courts and the surfacing, and a capital program for all of that. And so we're really,
You just try to knock off, as many as you can, year after year, and,
Yeah, and that was really I just wanted to just, get to, how much input, and I think you've addressed that really nicely. Thank you.
Paul?
This is a well-prepared list. I really appreciate the hard work and the effort that goes into it. And there's no but. I had a question that when all this work is being set up, and you talked about going out to 3 bids, or how much of this work is actually done by building and grounds? Is a lot of it done by building and grounds, or or the figures just what are they just costs, materials, and things like that?
so it's really a mix. If you look at that list, like the fencing, it doesn't make any sense for us to put up fencing. We can make a phone call and get fencing put up very economically, unless we have to repair it. That's different. The roadway maintenance, we would be, DPW would be ordering that material and spreading it on the roads. And we're in the parks crews help spread that. So we'd be ordering material, we'd be putting it down. The drainage improvements, I think I mentioned that was gonna be a combination. I think the grounds division is gonna hire a contractor to help them on part of it, so it'll be a split. Same thing with the renovations. We'll have a contractor with a laser grading device that's right there working with our staff. So it'll be a split.
So it's a mix, really?
It's a mix,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay.
Same thing for the buildings division.
Right.
There's projects in there that our carpenter we work on, and the painting, some of the painting we do, and just buy the paint. It's a mix, well said.
Okay. And to keep everything light, what's the difference between the water bubblers and the water fountains?
See, I know, I use both
So the
things.
difference between New Jersey and Massachusetts?
Yeah, there we go.
But not Connecticut. It's just a local thing, right?
It actually keeps our deliberations light, too. It
Yeah.
comes up every meet, when we're looking at priorities on both budgets.
Same thing, right?
We go around that same circle.
We can save money by getting the bubblers. I say, let's do it.
Oh, okay.
I call them in Michigan, but I'd like to
Drinking
find out.
fountains.
Yeah.
I don't know what a bubbler is.
Those sound much more expensive.
It's a fountain you drink from. It makes a lot more sense than a water bubbler. I don't know.
Thank you. I'm all set.
Anything from the audience? Bill? Sure, you have something more substantive than that?
Again, Bill Bradstreet, Precinct 1. The water bubblers, I can understand them being replaced. Is that because of their age and use, or because they've been damaged somehow?
So the ones that we have break frequently. So they're older, they break and leak, and now we have new ones that are more dependable. Actually, people like using them better, so it's a combination. We're getting a better unit, and it's more dependable for us. We don't have to fix it as much.
I'd also say they're more environmentally friendly, right? You
Right.
can reuse your water bottles with the new ones. Yep.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Well done.
And we convene on Wednesday at 7 in this room.
All right. Thank you.
Stay down here.